Hello, folks. Welcome back from England. This is Chris. In July 2025, the United States deported 5 individuals from Vietnam, Jamaica, Laos, Cuba, and Yemen. All were convicted felons, and Eswatini said that it's holding them in solitary confinement until they can be repatriated. Now, the Supreme Court in June of 2025 allowed the Trump administration to deport migrants to third countries without giving them a chance to show that they could be harmed in those third countries. Internal U.S. immigration enforcement guidance issued in July said that migrants, illegal immigrants, could be deported to countries that had not provided diplomatic assurances of their safety in as little as 6 hours. That's a pretty quick turnaround. I mean, most government things don't operate within 6 hours, but deportation, that's pretty quick to extradite someone to a third-party country. White House spokesman Abigail Jackson said the men deported to South Sudan and Eswatini were the worst of the worst and included people convicted in the United States of child sex abuse and murder. American communities are safer with these heinous illegal criminals gone. Now, I can't disagree with that at all. I mean, I agree 100% that these people shouldn't be in America and we shouldn't be footing the bill for crimes. They never should have come into America. We're talking about illegal aliens. We're talking about criminal alien invaders who violated our sovereignty, crossed our border illegitimately, and then hid amongst our population to defraud our nation, then committed heinous crimes on top of that. So what's going on here? The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said in June that third country deportations allow them to deport people so uniquely barbaric that their own countries won't take them back. Now, critics have countered this, saying that it's not clear the U.S. tried to return the men who were deported to South Sudan and Eswatini to their home countries, and that the deportations were unnecessarily cruel. Unnecessarily cruel. Folks, the murder, rape, and other violent crime that these people have inflicted on innocent American citizens is far more cruel than the fates which they deserve. The love affair bleeding hearts have for psychopaths, murderers, rapists, and child molesters is astonishing. If only they had such concern for the innocents in America before allowing the invasion to occur in the first place. These folks act as if these criminal alien invaders are entitled to protection under the U.S. Constitution. Their invasion in violation of our sovereignty does not entitle them to the succor of our Constitution. They are an invading force, a somewhat disorganized one, but an invading force just the same. So this brings us to the other side of the coin, third countries. They're arriving in South Sudan, Uganda, and Eswatini, among other destinations. From there, the expectation is that they'll be repatriated to their origins, countries that refuse to take their own nationals, in essence, rogue states that export violent criminals to the United States. What else would you call this? The Times Live reports that human rights lawyers and activists have sued the government of Eswatini for making a secret deal with President Trump's administration to accept third country deportees from the U.S., which they claim is unconstitutional. Now, I've looked at Eswatini's constitution from 2005, and I would disagree with that assessment. The Eswatini Litigation Center said the agreement made with the U.S. was illegal because it was not submitted to Parliament for approval and the terms were not disclosed. Well, under the Constitution, they don't have to be. They also said they do not know the condition of the deportees because no one has been allowed access to them. Well, what right do you have to access to third-party nationals that are in prison in Eswatini? Do you have a right to them? I'm not sure that you do. Maybe their embassies or their consulates might, but do you? I doubt it. Now, the case that was supposed to be heard in Mbambane on Friday has been postponed until September 25th because the government did not file response papers. The lead applicant told Reuters news agency outside the court on Friday when the case wasn't heard. Eswatini's Attorney General Sifiso Khumalo said in a text message that the case had no legal basis. Now, after reviewing the Eswatini Constitution, I tend to agree with the Attorney General. Khumalo said it's a frivolous legal application. Now, folks, if you read Eswatini's Constitution from 2005, when the king was put under pressure for the absent monarch to actually have a constitution, Section 238 of Eswatini's 126-page Constitution is on international agreements. Section 238, paragraph 1. The government may execute or cause to be executed international agreement in the name of the crown. Now, an international agreement executed by or under the authority of the government shall be subject to ratification and to become binding on the government by an act of Parliament or a resolution of at least 2/3 of members of a joint sitting of the two chambers of Parliament. However, 238A.3, the provisions of subsection 2 do not apply where the agreement is of a technical, administrative, or executive nature or is an agreement which does not require ratification or accession. This would be an executive nature agreement between the government of Eswatini, either the prime minister and or the monarch, and the U.S. Therefore, it does not require ratification. Simple as that. For the purpose of this section, international agreement includes a treaty, a convention, protocol, international agreement, or an arrangement. This would be an arrangement made by the prime minister and or by the monarch. Therefore, it doesn't require the consent or submission to parliament. Now, folks, deportation to third countries is hardly a novel or new concept, though the media and leftist groups in America act as though President Trump has fabricated the policy out of thin air. In early August, Reuters reported that according to Mexican government data, more than 5,700 non-Mexican illegal immigrants have been deported to Mexico since Trump took office, continuing a policy that was begun under former President Joseph Robinette Biden. But the media fails to recognize that Biden was following this policy as well. They act as if Trump just made this up out of whole cloth. The thing is, the media will rarely be honest about these programs, losing their minds over 8 violent criminals while ignoring tens of thousands of people that Biden has already deported to Mexico. Isn't it ironic? They're upset about 8 of these criminal alien invaders who were convicted felons sent to places like Uganda, South Sudan, and Eswatini. Yet the 5,700 that have gone since early this year in Mexico, they don't seem to have a problem with. And the tens of thousands that Biden deported to Mexico under the same policy doesn't seem to bother the media. They completely forgot about that. Which brings us to the moral question. Is this an appropriate action for the Trump administration? It would seem a bit unfair to ask other countries to take the responsibility to house or deal with violent offenders. I think that's a fair statement. The problem lies with governments who violate international norms and refuse to repatriate their own nationals, in effect, making them stateless. Now, with regard to statelessness, countries cannot deliberately make a national a stateless person. International law, particularly the 1961 Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness, prohibits states from depriving individuals of their nationality in a way that leaves them stateless. And that's essentially what's happening here. They're refusing to take their violent criminals back that they've exported to America, and therefore they're making them stateless. Countries have a legal and ethical obligation to prevent it and ensure that everyone has nationality. So, of those 8 people sent from those countries, let's see who's a signatory to the 1961 Convention. Cuba? No. Jamaica? Yes. In 2013, they acceded to the treaty. Therefore, they're in violation of international norms that they've agreed to. Laos, Vietnam, and Yemen also have not signed the agreement. Interestingly, the United States has not ratified the 1961 Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness, nor is it a party to the 1954 Convention relating to the status of stateless persons. The U.S. lacks specific laws or procedures to address statelessness for individuals within the country. The only options if you're in the United States and you're stateless is to apply for asylum or leave, basically what the UK would call leave to remain. And that's your only options. Which brings us to the novel solution of sending violent offenders to willing third parties that seek to retain good relations with the United States or curry favor from Washington. That is up to those countries. Personally, I'm not really in favor of it. I'm also not in favor of these people being in the country. Just send them back across the border whence they came. If they slipped in from Mexico, then push them back across the Mexican border. If they came by boat, take them across the sea and dump them where they came from. That's my view on it. But the Trump administration, going around a court order, is sending them to third countries that are willing to take them, particularly in Africa. So thank you to those countries willing to take these violent felons off our hands. I wish you luck with it. But the bottom line here is that South Africa is losing its mind. Civil rights groups complaining about Eswatini not being a safe place because these criminals will find their way to South Africa. Well, what does that say about the condescending attitude of South Africans and the South African government towards the government of Eswatini, a sovereign state, saying that it has the inability to keep these people under control? I think South Africa is enough of its own criminals and doesn't need to worry about people coming from Eswatini. And maybe South Africa should focus on its own criminals instead of denigrating the reputation of Eswatini. What say you, South Africa? Mzansi, Eswatini, Swaziland. What do you guys have to say? I think that it's insulting for South African government officials to imply or state that Eswatini should not be taking these convicted felons off the hands of the United States. Feel free to comment.